Spider-Man may have one of the coolest superhero costumes of all time, especially the red and blue variety. Superman can suck it, but as likable and as awesome as the web slinger is, he's not invincible. I mean, he can never pay his rent, he makes talking to girls look like open heart surgery, and he cannot pull off the emo look to save his life. Seriously, Pete, never go full fringe ever again. But it's not just financial worries and social insecurities that can thwart Peter Parker. Nope, if you're looking to squish this adolescent arachnid, then your options are surprisingly plentiful. Welcome back to The Binger, guys, and in today's video we're going to be looking at 10 Spider-Man weaknesses that could lead to his demise. So if Spidey keeps swooping in and ruining your plans for world domination, then you're in luck. Let's be honest, if you had superhuman abilities that allowed you to run, jump, and swing your way through Manhattan like a boss, you wouldn't want to sit waiting in traffic, would you? Neither would Spider-Man. Although Spidey has had quite a bit of history of driving, correction, he has had a history of driving badly. Even though webbing around New York is about as efficient as it gets in terms of transport, Spidey has still insisted in the past of jumping behind the wheel and driving from A to B. And one of the vehicles he did this in was the Spider-Mobile, which is pretty much one of the worst superhero vehicles ever. Sure, it can shoot webs and climb walls, but that becomes pretty useless when you're a god-awful driver. Several characters in the comics have commented on Spidey's lack of finesse behind the wheel and openly stated that they think his Spider-Mobile is ugly. And we even got a nod to Parker's terrible driving skills in this Spider-Man Homecoming promo. Villains of the world, listen up. If you want to outrun Spider-Man, buy him a new car. Aunt May is one of the most consistent things in Peter's life, and in a lot of ways, she keeps him grounded and normal. But just like any of us, Peter has to watch out for his family, even when bank robberies need foiling and cats in the trees need saving. From a superhero point of view, this can be a bit of a hindrance. Not only does Peter have to keep an eye on Aunt May and make sure he helps her with everything from bringing the groceries in to cleaning his room, but he's also got to keep her safe from harm as she's a potential target for bad guys. We can see Aunt May being used as leverage in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, with villains specifically targeting her because she is A, vulnerable, and B, important to Peter. And to be honest, it's the same with anyone associated with him, be it his Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy love interest, or even his friend Ned. Being one of the fundamental elements here on Earth, water can be a game changer for pretty much everyone, and that includes superheroes like Spider-Man. Sure, he could drown or find himself freezing and getting a cold, there's a bonus weakness for you right there, but that's not why we've included water on today's list. Spidey has found himself soaked in water multiple times throughout his history, and one of the most popular speech bubble fillers that follows is something along the lines of, "Uh-oh, my web shooters don't work." As chronicled in the comics and some of the movies, not the Sam Raimi ones, Peter Parker has made his own webbing, and he fires said webbing through wrist-mounted shooters. The problem is, this webbing is not waterproof, so when he goes for a dip in his costume or Hydro Man catches him off guard, you won't see him swinging out of frame. So if you're super powerless and need to increase your odds against Spidey, be sure to bring water balloons and aim for his hands. And speaking of soggy web fluid, that brings us nicely into our next entry. As we just mentioned, Peter Parker makes his own web fluid, which he uses to stick bad guys to walls and swing through the city. It has the tensile strength to stop, hold, or bind pretty much anything, or at least anyone. But that counts for nothing if he runs out. And you'd be surprised of how often that happens. Many a time, Spidey has took aim at a fleeing bad guy and heard the distressed click-click of an empty chamber. Just like with any projectile weapon or tool, Spider-Man carries ammo around with him in the form of small cartridges, and he stores them on a utility belt. In other words, he can only carry so much of it at one time. Spidey did incorporate a 6-shooter style rotating reloading system at one point, but that still didn't stop him from running out. There is one solution, although die-hard fans of Spider-Man canon aren't gonna like it: organic webbing. Remember the Sam Raimi movies, it was part of Peter's mutation. Moving on. Up next, we have yet another web-related pitfall, because let's be honest, without his webbing, Spidey does tend to struggle. So let's just say, for argument's sake, Spidey has an infinite amount of webbing, and he's somewhere where there is absolutely no water, like a desert. Actually, that's perfect for the point we're trying to make. If he was somewhere without towering skyscrapers, like a desert, how would he swing around? I mean, it's all well and good when he's stringing together sweet somersault maneuvers after flinging himself high in the air, but if there weren't any buildings to web to, he'd find getting around pretty problematic. Sure, he can slingshot himself to the ground and pull his way to the next destination, but that's nowhere as quick as slinging. Plus, we don't think web would stick to sand very well anyway. But forget about the desert. Peter even finds himself struggling in his home setting, as we can see him running through the sprinklers of a golf course in Spider-Man Homecoming. He even clumsily makes his way through a suburban area with its limited buildings and structures to cling onto. But it's fine, no worries, so long as he has a helicopter to follow him around everywhere he goes. Aside to his wall-crawling and web-shooting abilities, Peter Parker's spider-sense is probably the most unique power he possesses. I mean, when it's in full working order, it can help him dodge bullets and sense danger before it's even dangerous. But what about when it's not in full working order? Although spider-sense is clearly one of Spidey's biggest assets, it has proven a bit of an Achilles heel in the past, mainly due to how sensitive it can be. In other words, it's easily misled and counteracted. Many times in the comics, Spider-Man has found himself without the use of his spidey sense for numerous reasons, or found that it's relaying unreliable information. And for someone who relies on it as much as Spidey, that's not ideal. The fact that his spidey sense isn't triggered by certain villains doesn't help either, including symbiotes like Venom and Carnage. And it doesn't react to things he doesn't personally deem as dangerous either, like his friends or family. There's even a point in the comics where Aunt May smacks him over the head with a vase. Where was your sixth sense then, Pete? As he relies on it so much, he may find himself waiting for it to give him the heads up if any danger is impending, which is of course futile when it's either not working as it should or there's things around that don't set it off. This symbiote is to Spider-Man what antiseptic cream is to a cut. It aims to heal any nastiness and infection. Sounds harmless, right? Well, ANTI-VENOM's powers can be used for good, but they can also be used to devastating effect on Spider-Man. Basically, ANTI-VENOM was created as a result of remnants of Venom's symbiote and white blood cells inside Eddie Brock's body. The outcome was a Venom-like symbiote that is capable of curing any disease or ridding the body of any infections it may have. And yep, you guessed it, that includes radiation, specifically the radiation from the spider bite Peter received. And without the radiation, Peter loses all his spider-like abilities. ANTI-VENOM actually came close to completing this cleanse in one of the comics, but it was interrupted, leaving Peter's powers intact. However, as a result, whenever ANTI-VENOM even gets near him, he loses them again. Even ANTI-VENOM's web has healing and power-supping capabilities, another thing Spidey has to watch out for. So this one may not sound much like a weakness, especially for a superhero like Spider-Man, but its effects can be devastating to his crime-fighting abilities. We all know how overthinking things can make us indecisive, and as you can expect, this can be pretty costly for someone who saves lives at an hourly basis. But we're not just talking about Peter's internal monologue that has him debating over whether he should have pizza or burgers for lunch. We're talking about him losing his powers altogether because of stress and guilt. This may sound like a psychosomatic extreme, but it's happened to Spider-Man multiple times. Whether it's the stress of hiding his identity, conflicts in his romantic life, or guilt over his beloved Uncle Ben, his psychological state can cause his powers to disappear. Due to the self-inflicted nature of this, and the fact that it can happen at any given time, it's perhaps one of the most dangerous weaknesses of any superhero. It just so happens that this weakness is also one of the most unique and relatable traits of the web slinger. That brings us conveniently on to number 2. By definition, a superhero is someone who is deemed, well, super and a hero. And you don't usually get that kind of reputation unless you save some lives and risk your own. Sure, there are many different types of heroes, even anti-heroes, but there's no denying that some stick their necks out for the greater good more than others, and Spider-Man is certainly one of them. The problem with this, however, is that it makes him extremely weak in the eyes of enemies. Basically, if you can't find a way to physically beat Spider-Man, then just lean on his humanity. Tell him someone needs saving in a burning building, send a train hurtling towards a dead end, or hold a cable car full of people off a bridge. He'll come running, allowing you to escape, or lay a few cheap shots on him. From a practical point of view, this means Spider-Man is extremely motivated as he values human life amongst everything else and will do anything in his power to protect it. But it also means that his decision-making can become clouded, and villains will always take advantage of that. Put it this way, given the choice to save one life or 50 lives, he wouldn't choose one or the other. He'd try to save everyone, and that's why we love him so much. Although Spidey has many flaws rooted in his love for others and the human race as a whole, our number one spot goes to science, and one particularly insidious substance. We're talking about a substance so powerful that it eradicates all of Spider-Man's powers, and if someone uses enough of it, kills him. And such a reputation has seen it labeled as Spider-Man's kryptonite, but to all you science geeks out there, you can call it ethyl chloride. Created by an evil doctor, Spencer Smythe, ethyl chloride drains Spidey of all his powers and renders him helpless. And it's used by Smythe's ruthless Spider Slayer squad in the comics. And it's not just Spider-Man it affects either. Anyone with spider-like abilities, good or bad, becomes helpless when it's used. So why haven't we seen it used in any of the movies? Well, because the movie wouldn't be very long. If Spider-Man was a werewolf, then ethyl chloride would be the silver bullet. So which weakness do you think would be most costly to our friendly neighborhood webhead? Did we leave any big ones out? Be sure to let us know in the comments section down below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to The Binger for more awesome videos like this. See you next time.